So I thought, as I've got the M1R out of the rack for some maintenance, I'd show you how easy it is to change the battery on it. It's a really easy process. You don't need anything other than a few screwdrivers. They all tend to be posi drive screwdrivers, and it's can be done in about under 10 minutes. So before you can change the battery, you need to know what battery to buy. Most synthesizers of this era, in fact all the legacy synthesizers I've got, use this 2032 3-volt lithium format. You can buy these, they're flat batteries, they tend to be in car key fobs. So if you go to your local automotive store, you can buy them relatively cheaply. I think I bought this packet of 2 batteries for about £5 UK, not more than 6 months ago. So the first job to do with an M1R is to take the wings off. And what you should be able to see is, and it's not very clear because it's black on black, let's try that, but there are actually 3 screws for each wing on each side, so you need to unscrew those. So once you've unscrewed the 6 screws, 3 on either side, and taken the wings off, you then need to unscrew 2 screws on either side. There's been 1 there, 2 on the other side of the unit, and then you have 2 further screws at the back of the unit, 1 here and 1 here. So once you've got all the screws off, the next thing to do is to remove the cover. And the way you do that on an M1 is you push the cover back, and then you get your fingers underneath it, and you pull the sides apart slightly, and the cover comes up and off. There you go. So once you've got the M1 open, then it's probably worthwhile giving somebody who's never seen an inside of an M1 before, or an M1R before, a quick tour of what the bits do. So this bit here is the power board. So this takes in the local supply and converts it down to 5 and 12 volts, which is what the unit operates on. This is a 240 volt power supply board. The 110 volt one that works slightly differently, and you will notice there is a fuse in here. If that fuse is blowing, then there is something wrong with the power supply board. We then move on to this board here, which is another important one. Takes quite a lot of damage if you're plugging jacks in and out. Not necessarily in studios, but definitely if you're moving it around. So you've got the MIDI ports there, in, out and through, the left and right out, and the assignable outs. And then this board here is the master motherboard of the unit, and this is where all the magic happens. And right in the centre of that board is where the battery is. In order to get the battery out, it's a little bit fiddly, but it's relatively simple. So what you do is you push the battery back, you lift the battery up, and then you just probably need the head of a flatbed screwdriver to take the battery out. Okay, to put the battery back in, or a new battery back in, you push the battery in, and it's spring loaded like that. And that's as difficult as it gets. Once you've done that, you can then put the unit back together in the reverse way you took it to pieces. So to reverse assemble the unit, you start with the lid. And what you need to do is you need to just slightly pull the wings apart so that the lid fits down nice and snugly, and then it pulls forward, and you might need just a screwdriver to help you get it over this lip, like so. And there you go, fits snugly on the unit. And now you can put the 6 screws that secure the lid, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, back in. This is a bit of a tip when you're actually screwing screws into keyboard equipment. Never force the screw. The reason for that is that these are machined quite tightly, and therefore if you try to force the screw in, you'll cross the thread and you'll have a nightmare trying to get the screw out again, or you'll have a nightmare trying to tighten it up properly. So my advice is always with this sort of stuff is, if the screw doesn't fit, just undo it and then run it round a couple of times the entrance to the screw hole, and then reverse it. And once you reverse it, what you'll find is that the screw goes in quite easily, assuming it hasn't been cross-threaded in the past. The other thing I'd always advise you to do when putting the units back together is, if you have a sequence of screws, in this case 6 screws, don't do them all up tight first off. Put all the screws in to a point where they're almost tight, and then tighten them all up in sequence. That way every screw is in. If you have a slight buckle in the equipment, which I've seen in the past, by doing them up tight as you go, you'll end up with one screw not fitting correctly, and then you have the chance of cross-threading it. The final part of the assembly is to put the wings back on. Again, with this, don't over tighten the screws. It should just be just over finger tight. There you go, there's the M1 with a new battery, ready to go back in the rack.